What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome in to another edition of the NFL Weekly, Week 5 to be exact, here of the 2023 season. Of course, we break down all the big games of the weekend. And of course, when I say we, I mean myself and my friend and co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing real well. Unfortunately, the Raiders' reign at the top of the AFC West seems to have come to an end, and doesn't seem like they're going to be returning to that anytime soon.
Yeah, that was a rather unceremonious exit. But yeah, we'll dive into that. I do have, at least one good thing I will say about the Raiders, but I'll save that till when we get to that game. But yeah, it's been unfortunate. But as we were talking before the podcast began, just how kind of wild, not even just last week, but overall, if you were to just kind of talk to us a month ago or 5-6 weeks ago and kind of say, hey, this is everything that's going to happen in the first 4 weeks, we would have asked you, what are you smoking and you need to get help. But this is where we are right now. It's been a wild 4 weeks, and last week definitely no exception. And as always, that's kind of where we're going to start our thoughts on, week 4, but really in general, really the first 4 weeks overall. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
I'll tell you what, it has still just been a real head scratcher in a lot of ways. If you would have told me that the Bengals weren't going to be challenging, and that begs the question. One of the notes I made here, Buffalo's looking real good right now. I thought it was going to be a much closer game against Miami this past week. Buffalo came out and took care of business, and you wonder if they're not starting to feel like, hey, we got this. We got this. They're not going to have that challenge from the Bengals like they've had it. So, but the Bengals, Burrow, I don't know what's going on over there. The Cincinnati fans must be deeply discouraged. And then what are the other deeply discouraging fan bases besides the Raiders, which is they're just a mess right now. The Steelers fan base, the Bears fan base after that big collapse the other day. And then you think you've seen the worst unless you watched Monday night's game. And the New York Giants, you talk about an abysmal team. And what a disappointed fan base. One year you're going to the playoffs, even if it was by luck, you made it to the playoffs. They are nowhere near a playoff caliber team right now. And I saw that they let a running back go on Tuesday morning, and I can't recall who it was. But all I'm thinking is, but you kept all 5 of your interior offensive linemen. Are you kidding me? That whole group should have been let go after that game.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate on the Giants side of things because, as you said, they were essentially kind of, Brian Daboll was coach of the year last year, and his seat is very hot now. And at the same time, a lot of quarterbacks got paid this offseason, and some of them do or are having some question marks. But the biggest has to be Daniel Jones. Now, obviously, the Joe Burrow thing we'll get to when we talk about the Bengals. But I don't think people are terribly worried overall for Joe Burrow. Maybe this year, yeah. But I think overall, I don't think there are people in Cincinnati that are going, God, I can't believe we paid Joe Burrow. There is a large majority of people who are saying, I can't believe we paid Daniel Jones. And that was before the season started. That was before this began. And it's getting out of control, and dumpster fire, things like that get thrown around. I think Monday night was one of the first times that I can remember seeing a team kind of fall apart in front of our eyes. I think the frustration from Daboll obviously bubbled over, and I can't really blame him. I do think it's a little misguided or whatever. He's very frustrated with Daniel Jones, and I get it. But at the same time, when Daniel Jones is dropping back and knowing he has 2 seconds before he gets demolished, and that is best case scenario, I can understand the frustration from Daniel Jones as well. And I think the one thing that hurts Daniel Jones, especially with that fan base, is he's not a very demonstrative guy. I think he's got a great poker face, and who knows, maybe he just doesn't care. I don't think that's the case. But I also do think he's somebody, he's not Phillip Rivers, right? He's not going to be over there. He's almost, and I'm only saying this because of his mannerisms, not because of his play, but it's very similar to a Tom Brady type. You kind of look at him, and for the most part, he's pretty even keel. So I think that's something to deal with. But for the Giants, they have to figure it out and have to figure it out fast. As we'll get to here in a little bit, I don't think this is the week we get it figured out. But my week 4 thoughts. Obviously, we've been dealing the last few weeks with the let's just say the arrival of a new demographic. The Swifties have arrived. If you watch Sunday Night Football,
stop.
Goodness gracious,
stop.
It's out of control. But I'm going to say this just because I feel like this has to be a public service announcement. Who knows? Maybe there's some new fans that for whatever reason typed in Google, typed in NFL, and this popped up. If that's the case, fantastic. The SEO is doing its job. If that is the case, I need to send out a warning to you. First of all, welcome. Enjoy the show. However, the show is not a Taylor Swift concert. You're not going to be given friendship bracelets. It's not going to be about peace and love when you go to a football game. Not everyone's going to get along. Even the people wearing the same jerseys in this crowd aren't going to get along. It's not a family-friendly atmosphere. As much as I wish it was, this is a much different environment than the ones I think that a lot of them have been exposed to. So I just wanted to throw it out there. If there's any Swifties listening for the first time or this or that, just be careful. It's not a pop concert. It's not a family-friendly atmosphere. I've never been to a football game and went, yeah, I could have brought my nephew to that and it would have been okay, for better or worse. But anyway, I just want to get that off my chest. But I think overall, the one thing that did jump out to me this past weekend, and especially for that game, was Zach Wilson. I've been very, very critical of Zach Wilson, and a lot of people have, for good reason. He played his tail off, by far his best game of his career. Probably deserved to win that game. There were some very questionable calls. We'll leave that for another day, but I do want to shout out Zach Wilson because, as I said, I've been very critical of him, and I do like to give credit to players who deserve credit. I don't know if it's going to continue. Who knows? We might never see that Zach Wilson again, but we did see it, and I do think we need to address it. But with that being said, time to shift our attention to week 5. It is going chronologically. We're going to start with the Thursday night game, and it's going to be a rough one, folks. But it is the Chicago Bears. They are heading to kind of our nation's capital, technically Landover, Washington, or Landover, Maryland, but they're in the vicinity. They will face the Commanders on Thursday Night Football. The spread is 6.5, and the over-under is 44.5. This is an NFC East game, so I'll get this one started. I think what we saw last week, or definitely what I saw last week from Washington, two things. Offensively, Sam Howell, I don't know if he's going to ever be an MVP candidate, but if you put the right pieces around this guy, he'll get you. He'll get you some wins, probably get you a playoff appearance. I mean, this year it looks like it's a possibility. I've been really impressed with what I've seen out of Sam Howell. Even that, 2 weeks ago when they kind of were embarrassed, I kind of throw that out. But 3 out of the 4 weeks, Sam Howell has been very good. And I think also with that, Eric Bieniemy, there were a lot of question marks about Eric Bieniemy. Is he just somebody is he kind of one of those Peyton Manning coordinators? It's all Peyton, or in this case, it's all Patrick Mahomes. I don't think you can continue to say that about Eric Bieniemy. And I think he went to Washington to prove that, and to prove that he is head coach material. I give him the benefit of the doubt there. Final thought as well on this one. Matt Eberflus, as we were talking before we hit record, I don't know how he's still employed right now. He is essentially, with his decision-making, if Brandon Staley had a terrible team, he would be the AFC or the NFC version of that. His decision-making in that game I don't understand 4th and 1 with 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter after you've already coughed up a 21-point lead. You think, oh, we're just going to go for it? Like what in the last 4 weeks has made you think that that is attainable and the right call? I don't get it. But in terms of this one on the betting line, look, I'm not terribly confident, but I can't go anywhere other than Washington. Until Chicago proves otherwise, to me, I think Washington is far and away the better team on both sides of the ball. I think they're miles ahead in the coaching side of things. So, like I said, I'm not terribly confident. I don't like 6.5, but I will take Washington. And the over-under, I do think we'll see some points being scored. So I will take the over 44.5. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Bears at Commanders.
Yeah, you pretty much hit the nail on the head with Washington, and they took those Eagles obviously down to the wire and beyond, which I'm sure left you chewing your nails right up until the bitter end. And if not for that field goal, who knows how this could have ended up. Commanders played some great offense, and you're right, the enemy schemes are starting to come through. What's going to happen on Sunday? Well, Chicago proved that they just can't hold the lead. They can't play 4 quarters of football. To collapse the way they did against a very, very suspect Denver Bronco team, that kind of is the writing on the wall for me. I think in this one, it's not going to be much different. The only difference is going to be, I don't think Chicago is going to be in the game. Washington defense is going to stifle the Chicago Bears. Does Washington cover? Current line is -5.5 through Vegas Insider. I will take 5 on that. Give me Washington -5. Over under is at 44.5 right now. And there is a very slight chance of rain. I believe it's 10% or less, but could be a little damp out there, a little cool out there. But just the way that the Bears are playing, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go over on this one, but I'll take another half point. So give me 5 points for the Redskins and give me over 44.
Commanders. Don't want to get
Commanders. Excuse me. Yes.
But no, I love that. And apologies. And there were a lot of movement on the line when I put this together.
There have been, yes.
I was going to. Yeah. And that's odd because if you would have told me this line moved, I would not have thought it moved in that direction. But bully for me, I love 5. I love 5. And well, I don't
Absolutely.
love 5, but I'm a lot more comfortable at 5 than I was at 6.5. So count me in on that one as well. Moving on to the AFC West, of course, we are going to start with the Raiders. It is the Packers 2-point favorites as they head to the Death Star Allegiant Stadium. They will face the Raiders on Monday Night Football. The over-under sits at 44.5. Nobody gets the first word on this podcast for Raider Talk before Raider Jim. Before you get into your game pick, and I might be putting you on the spot here, and I've been meaning to ask you for the last few weeks. You might know where I'm going with this, but any thoughts on what's been going on with Chandler Jones?
I understand they have basically released him at this point. They're not making statements that say specifically what's going on. It is just a real travesty, though. Obviously, I'm not saying this is the apples to apples comparison, but it almost reminds me of a Barrett Robbins situation. Barrett Robbins, anybody who's followed the Raiders or the Super Bowl year 2002, when they went to the big game, and he was the starting center and shows up missing on game day, and his depression kicked in. They found him in a bar in Tijuana, out of his mind basically, because he had been drinking and taking whatever. And that is not a knock on Barrett Robbins or even on Chandler Jones. I put just a real quick post out on both X and on Instagram, and I just put the numbers from Jones's jersey out there and said, we need to remember he's not a punchline, and this isn't time you make a sport of something like whatever he's going through. This is definitely deeper than football, and my heart and thoughts just go out to him and his family, and hopefully they can get him straightened out and give him the assistance that he needs.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Obviously, I do remember the Barrett Robbins situation, very vividly.
Very
it was
sad.
Here in San Diego. And obviously, I hate to say it, and I don't like to speculate or anything like that, but when things like this happen, the first place my mind goes is CTE. And
Yes.
I don't know Chandler Jones. I've never been probably within 100 miles of Chandler Jones. So I can't really fully say that, but just some of the things, reaching out, to the owner, and it just seems like erratic behavior. Now it's erratic behavior to me. I understand that. But like I said, in those situations, it reminds me a lot of obviously what we've seen out of Antonio Brown. And I mean, unfortunately, I think most football fans have at least accepted that the Pittsburgh Steeler Bengals playoff game from the years back, Vontez Burfict hit on Antonio Brown. Once again, I'll like speculate, but it's kind of the worst kept secret that might have been kind of. It's kind of crazy to go back and listen to early Antonio Brown give interviews, because if you just listen to it, it's a completely different person. But not to bring him into it, it's just a sad situation all around. And the one thing I do worry about is if, he's no longer employed by the Raiders, hopefully he is still somehow, some way getting access to the medical support that I assume he at least needs or continues. I don't know that, but I just you think he needs, there needs to be some medical backup, and I hope somehow, some way, it's not like a Cobra situation. But don't know the specifics. Just wanted to get your
And
thoughts.
I think he's tenured enough in the league that he
Okay,
will
good.
have those benefits available to him. Unfortunately, this is one of those situations where, and unfortunately, I know this from firsthand. You can only help the person if they want to be helped.
Yeah.
So that's the other variable that everybody needs to consider. But hopefully, again, somebody in the family is able to talk to him, or one of his former teammates, current Raider teammates, is going to be able to talk to him and convince him, it's going to be the right move to make, to go seek some psychological assistance or evaluation.
And if I could be off base here, but I do believe he is either brothers or close cousins with John Jones, who's a UFC fighter. Who, if you know UFC, John Jones, probably one of the greatest fighters overall, but has plenty of his own demons that he's had to fight. So, best of luck, for Chandler Jones. But I think him getting healthy, overall is a lot more important than him putting on the silver and black. But quick little update. It is, according to Bovada, it's only a 1-point spread. So Packers only a 1-point favorite. The over-under moved up a half a point to 45. So Raider Jim, your thoughts, Monday Night Football in Vegas.
Well, I will tell you. Last week was such a disappointment on many levels. One, of course, the Raiders lost. Two, this was a division game. This was very important for the Raiders. And as much as they were being dismantled, I will give a little credit to the Raider defense. They did come around. They did keep the offense in the game. And what lost that game for them, one of the things, there's many reasons why they lost the game to the Chargers, but one of them, big percentage of it for me, is that call from the 2.5-yard line. You've got a running back who finally is starting to get a couple yards here and there when he hits the line, and they throw the ball on first down, first and goal, and they throw an interception. That was the most ridiculous play call that they could have ever made. And whoever phoned it in, and whichever coaches agreed to it, they should all be reprimanded for that. Terrible, terrible play management. And then, of course, the defensive secondary did their thing. And when they had a chance to possibly get the ball back and make one last attempt to get close, what do? They give up a shot down the sidelines, and that sealed the game. So the Raiders are the Raiders, and what's going to happen against the Packers, who are playing pretty decent, even though they got it handed to them by Detroit the other night. The Packers are going to come into town, take the Packers money line on this one. I think they're going to exploit the Raiders defense all over again. And I do think we're going to see over 45, maybe take it down, keep it at 44.5, but either way, take the over, take money line on the Packers.
And I did a little, just looked in, and as of 2 days ago, so that would have been Monday, Jimmy G was still in concussion protocol. So, Brian Hoyer, possibly Aiden O'Connell, who knows, going forward. But, back in my days of, kind of training to be a manager at my old bar, there was a book, and I forget what the book was, but, and one of the things that they always said, give kind of like a compliment sandwich where you start with something, hey, you do this really well, and then you follow up with something they need to improve on, and then you end with something they do well. So it's like, hey, great job on these things. Let's focus on this. I tried really hard. I couldn't find two things or two good things to say about the Raiders, but I do have one. There was one thing that I really did like from Vegas, and it was their second half play. Now, obviously, the play calls, certain ones, yeah, but this is a team that doesn't jump out to me. This isn't like the Giants, where the Giants just gave up, or at least appeared to give up. The Raiders came out and they at the very least were very prideful, whatever you want to call it. But I was impressed with the way they at least fought back. It doesn't jump out to me as a team that has essentially given up on their coach, and I think that's a plus. Now, it is still only week 5. It's not good news if we're talking about that this early, but it is something to be said. And I do think Green Bay is going to be licking their wounds after, it's not too often that they get embarrassed by the Lions in Lambeau on national TV. They also have 3 extra days to kind of get ready for Vegas. I think there's going to be a good amount of Packer fans who make the trip. Vegas, like Los Angeles, is a very easy place for these kind of Midwest or back East teams to say, you know what, let's take our family vacation there, and I'll sneak in a football game. I like the Packers here, like you. Give me the money line. I don't want to mess around with no spread. I do like the under here, though. I just, look, if Jimmy G's in, maybe you convince me of the over, but I don't know if we can see that offensive output again from the Raiders, because as much as that fight was great from the Raiders, it was against the Chargers. And let's be honest, if there's one constant with the Chargers is if they go up double digits, add to halftime, there's about a 50-50 shot that they're going to lose that game. And they almost did. So there is that, but I do like the Packers here on Monday nights. Staying in the AFC West, it is the Kansas City Chiefs heading to Minnesota to face the Vikings. The Chiefs they were 4.5. Let's see where we're at now.
4. They're at 4 now.
4. Thank you. 4. 4-point favorites, and the over-under, is it still 53?
52.5.
52.5. All right. Well, we're going Raider. Jim, what are your thoughts? Kansas City at Minnesota.
No disrespect to the New York Jets. They played a heck of a game. They're still the New York Jets, and they're playing against, the big bad, the champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. I have to tell you, watching that game and watching some of the miscues, if you will, or the, just not 100% on point like the Kansas City Chiefs usually are they distracted? Are they distracted by this whole Hollywood thing that's going on with the girl and the tight end? Possibly. Is that impacting their play? I don't know. Maybe that's just me thinking that's the case. Kansas City's got to put it together, though. This girl shows up in Minnesota, and they're still fighting to beat the Vikings. That's going to be a little bit of a sign for me. But Kansas City -4, I think they're going to put it together. Minnesota, what do you say? They're going to fight. They're probably going to be competitive going well into the season, but are they going to beat the Chiefs? I don't think so. I think this one is the Chiefs. At -4, I would take -4 on that one. Over 52.5, just because of the way Cousins is playing. Yeah, I think there'll be some points on the board. Although I will give it to the Chiefs defense when they have to. They're really putting it together, but I'll still go with the, actually give me a half a point and take under on that. Under 53. Chiefs might cover the spread.
Yeah, I agree on the Chiefs side of things. I could see Minnesota, like you said, getting close. And it's really interesting. The Vikings are 1-3, and obviously they probably played better than that record. But to have Kansas City come in and only be 4-point favorites, I know they're on the road, but that's But at the same time, you understand why. They had their hands full with the Jets. And, as good as Zach Wilson played last week, you have Kirk Cousins, which is kind of a whole different animal. And obviously, Justin Jefferson is, if not the best, is one of the best wide receivers in all of football. I think it's going to be a big test for the Kansas City defense. I do think they pass it. I like 4. So give me Kansas City -4. And like you, actually, no, I apologize. I'm going the other way. I do think we see some points being scored. I like the over in this one. I just think I don't want to say a full-fledged shootout, but I think both teams kind of want to put, Minnesota wants to put the first 4 weeks behind them, but I really do think Kansas City wants to put last week behind them. And like you said, the distraction, that's got to be asked. People can roll their eyes and chuckle, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, if we're getting distracted, they're getting distracted, or, no, but there's a possibility that that's happening. I don't really think that's the case. I just think a lot of it is Patrick Mahomes learning to work with the new coordinator. Eric Bieniemy was essentially Patrick Mahomes' guy for the last 2 or 3 years. There is some adjustment there. They've gotten things figured out, and we'll see how this goes. I can't believe I'm saying this, but no word on whether or not Taylor Swift will be there on Sunday. But welcome to 2023 NFL talk. That's where we are as a football society. But it's going to be an interesting one. I do think it's going to be a good game. Final AFC West matchup. We'll be talking about the Chargers do have a bye, so we'll talk about them next week. It is the New York Jets. They're heading to Mile High. They will face the Denver Broncos. Per Bovada, the Broncos are 1.5-point favorites, and the over-under is 43. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Jets at Broncos.
I understand that the Denver Broncos are not the New York Giants, and so they're a little better than that. But the way I've seen the Jets play this year, and the way they've played the last couple of weeks, I think they're going to come in slight chance of rain in Denver, but it's a very slight chance. I think it's less than 5%, but it is out there, so they list it. For Denver to be the 1.5-point favorite at this time is a bit surprising to me, because they have not performed as such. Look at the game; they really had to fight with everything they had to beat the lowly Chicago Bears. I think the Jets come into town. I take the Jets money line all day long on this game. And I think we're going to see some points. So I think over 43 is going to be good, because I think Wilson's going to have a better game, but I think the Jets offense is going to come in and be productive.
Yeah, I promise I didn't copy your homework, but that's exactly what I have as well. Jets money line. I've just been impressed. Now, obviously, when they played New England, it didn't look good, and it looked like, the bottom's falling out. But I do think you also have to give them a lot of credit for kind of holding that together and going toe-to-toe with the defending Super Bowl champs. I think Robert Saleh has done a fantastic job in making do with what's been given to him. Obviously, the biggest what if is, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, wow, this is interesting, but that's not the case. Zach Wilson, once again, was that the exception to the rule, or have we seen kind of Zach Wilson take steps forward? And the one thing that I will give credit to him for is, a few years back, or, actually it was probably just last year because he was only a rookie, but he kind of had an attitude of like, look, I'm doing what I need to do, but, kind of passing the buck, if you will, not in so many words, and so obvious, but kind of subtly saying, look, I'm doing what I need to do. I don't know about everybody else. After that Patriot game, it really did change. The way he was talking was, yeah, I need to be better. When it comes to what needs to improve. I really liked that. Now, I didn't expect to see what we saw, but at the same time, with that plus what we saw, I'm going to give the Jets the benefit of the doubt. I think, they might at least be onto something. I think Breece Hall will get better if Zach Wilson can be good, because Zach Wilson isn't good. Guess what? Breece Hall's staring at 8-9 in the box in every running down situation. That's not going to help. That offensive line isn't going to move bodies. So give me the Jets, and I do like the over here. I think we're going to see some points being scored. I know Russell Wilson is kind of the butt of a lot of jokes right now, but he's still good for probably 17 points. I could see 27-17, 27-21. That'll get us to that magic number. But we'll see. I think a lot of it's going to determine on if Zach Wilson can kind of repeat or at least get close to what we saw last week going forward. But it's going to be
staying on this game for just a second,
yep.
The Jets had a terrible first quarter against the Chiefs. I mean, they were down 17-0 at the end of the first quarter. But guess what? At halftime, they were only down by 2 points. Had they been able to put points on the board in the first quarter and in the fourth quarter, we might be talking about a different game right now.
100%. Fantastic job. It's very similar to the Raiders in terms of, at least, you saw that, okay, those guys they're going to go out and play for, at the very least, pride. And everyone's professionals and things like that. But sometimes, look, when you're down 17-0, Taylor Swift's in the audience and you're just going, oh my gosh, it's national TV. I think a lot of teams would have folded. The Jets didn't, yeah. So you got to give them credit there for that. But we'll see if they can continue it against Denver. So switching our focus to my jurisdiction, the NFC East, we are going to start in Los Angeles or Lincoln Financial Field West, depending on how you want to determine it. But it is the Philadelphia Eagles. They're heading to SoFi to face the Rams. Just make sure I have the correct numbers. It's a lot easier when okay, there we are. 4.5 point favorites are the Eagles, and the over-under sits at 51 points. Obviously, I'll get this one started. For the Eagles, it was definitely a lot closer than I think a lot of people expected. I had Washington to cover the spread, so I was kind of expecting that. I didn't expect it to go to overtime. Not a huge fan of the defense last week. And I also would like to send Ron Rivera an edible arrangement or whatever he would like for not going for it, or not going for 2 at the end of the game, because that could have been a completely different scenario if he ends up going for 2 instead of just kicking the extra point and sending it to overtime. We shall see. But I did like what the Eagles did through the air. I thought Jalen Hurts had his best overall performance of the season against Washington, which is pretty good because, look, that's a good defensive team, especially that front seven. They're able to do what they need to. Eagles got to 4-0, and I don't think they've had, a B or higher game yet, and they're 4-0. On the Rams side of things, there's some whispers, maybe, possibly Cooper Kupp could come back. He has been activated off of IR, but it's that 3-week window. Essentially, he gets to practice with the team for the next 3 weeks, and he's either got to be put back on IR or onto the active roster. It's a very low possibility that we do see him, but he has been listed possibly as a game time decision. That would be interesting because the Eagles really did struggle in the secondary against the Commanders. And with all due respect to Sam Howell and some of those wide receivers, the Rams, it's a bit of a step up, at least, Stafford mentally and experience wise. Yes. And Nakua and Atwell, those two are, they've come out of nowhere. They look really good. The one thing the Eagles have to do in this game, their defensive line has to dominate a really bad Rams offensive line. That's the way the Eagles not only win this game, but cover this spread. Another thing to keep in mind as well, this is going to be at the best for the Rams' sake, 50-50 in the crowd, but I would not be surprised if you're hearing the EAGLES chants a lot. The Eagles just travel well. Every time they play at Los Angeles, they do kind of take over, so keep an eye on that. Overall, though, I never bet on my own team, but I do think the Rams get the cover here. I like to buy 0.5 point, so give me +4.5. I think the Eagles win this game, but I think it's similar to last week where you're biting your nails and it comes down to a field goal. And speaking of field goals, Jake the Make Elliott, outside of Justin Tucker, I think Fantastic. He has to be the best kicker, the most consistent, ice in his veins. It's incredible. He doesn't get talked about nearly enough. But he is a gem. That was a kid who was brought up or picked up off waivers 3 years ago. Wow. But I do think the Rams cover the spread. Eagles do get the win. I do think we see the over here. I just the Eagles defense, the secondary, they just signed Bradley Roby to kind of maybe be a bit of a stopgap. Don't know if he's going to be ready to roll this week. They've had to move James Bradbury inside to be the slot corner, and that's pushed Josh Jobe to the outside. That's not good for Eagles fans. So give me the Rams plus 4.5 and the over 50.5. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Birds in LA.
Yeah, I mean, Rams got the victory last week. It took them 5 quarters to do it. They were also playing the Indianapolis Colts. They also had, they were up 20-0 at halftime. And same thing, we're talking that same thing where all of a sudden the Ram defense disappears. They give up 23 points in the second half. Not good, and it's not going to work against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Philadelphia is going to come out and have a heck of a game. They're not going to be relaxed because they're playing the Rams, but let's face it, I think right now, if you put Washington and the Rams head to head, Washington's a better team. But I think Philadelphia is going to come out, take care of business. I'll take a 0.5 point, give me Philadelphia to cover at 4, but I think we're going to see the over. I think there's going to be points. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, and one that I haven't checked the local guide, but I'm pretty sure that game's going to be on locally, so I won't be beholden to Red Zone to watch the Eagles.
Channel 8 will usually cover the Rams and or the Chargers, depending on the schedule. So
and no Chargers.
They should be at 1 o'clock. They should be the game.
So, and unfortunately, I don't have I'm not able to take out a second mortgage to get NFL Sunday tickets. So, them the breaks. So what can you do? But moving on, staying in the NFC East, this is the game of the weekend, at least on paper. It's Sunday Night Football. It is the Dallas Cowboys heading to San Fran, or at least Santa Clara, to face the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners are, apologies, where are we? 3.5 point favorites. Yeah, it hasn't moved. So 3.5 point favorites. The over-under is 45. Obviously, I think right now, no unbiased person can say anything other than that the San Francisco 49ers are the best team in the NFL. Fine. Give them their 4-week trophy, whatever you want. Great. But yes, they have been by far the best team this season. Dallas has looked very good as well. However, there's that big old blemish of them losing by 12 to the Cardinals. I think Dallas gets exposed here. I think Dak Prescott is in a lot of trouble. I think he's going to be chasing the game. I don't think he gets an opportunity to hold the ball a whole lot. I don't know if Brock Purdy heard me a few weeks ago where I just asked the question, is he benefiting a lot from the weapons around him? That might be the case, but my goodness, the guy, I think he had 1 incompletion, 2 touchdowns. The stats are incredible for a guy who was taken literally the last pick of the draft. I think that the Niners get the job done here. I'll easily take 3.5. I could run this all the way up, maybe even to 5.5, but I'll easily take 3.5. I do think we stay under here. I think San Francisco kind of plays their ball control offense. Christian McCaffrey does his thing. Brock Purdy kind of dinks and dunks. Maybe the Cowboys only get 5 to 6, 7 possessions. They don't get a whole great opportunity, and that defense doesn't have that. I think that the Cowboys offense has been helped out a lot from their defense. I don't think the Niners oblige on this one. So give me the Niners minus 3.5 and the under as well. One other thing, these are 2 teams that I think they both expect to meet in the playoffs. So possibly we see kind of I don't want to say conservative offensive game plan, but I don't think we're going to see any kind of crazy trick plays. I don't think anybody wants to show anything in this one if they can help it. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Sunday Night Football, Cowboys at the Niners.
Couldn't agree more. And you hit the word exposed. That's what's going to happen with Dallas. They're going to get exposed. This is a very, very strong defense on the San Francisco side of the ball. Slight chance of rain again. They listed if it's going to be even 5% or less, 10% or less. So I'll throw that in there that it could be a little bit damp. I don't think it's going to impact the play at all for the game. But San Francisco's defense, I think they're going to run a lot of schemes. They're going to give a lot of looks to Dallas that's going to befuddle the Dallas offensive lineman. And I think they're going to run the edges real well, and they're going to get to the quarterback, or at least take him out of his comfort zone. And as you said, McCaffrey, you hit the word, you hit another player right there. I'm very thankful that for the first time in a long time, we're going into week 5, and there's no talk about McCaffrey's limping, McCaffrey's hurt, McCaffrey's on a day-to-day, he's on a did not practice. Guy's actually healthy, and it's showing. He is really, really contributing. So I'm with you. Does San Francisco cover 3.5? Sure. Do they cover more than that? Probably, but I'm not going to, go crazy with that. But they will cover 3.5, and I think we're going to see over 45.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one, and you're
Fun
right.
game.
Obviously, sorry.
Fun game. Good Sunday night game.
Yes, I really do. I hope it lives up to the billing. I am a little worried that the Niners just kind of throttle, and kind of just not lay on them, but just kind of turn it into kind of one of the Niners can win pretty boring ways. They don't really care about us, blah blah blah. But I think the Niners could really put it on them here. Hopefully, the Cowboys do make this one interesting. But moving on to the final NFC East game we'll be talking about, and this one is yikes. Anyways, it is the New York Giants. They are heading to Miami. Looking right now. Wow. Okay, yes, the line has moved a little bit. The Miami Dolphins are 11.5-point favorites.
Wow.
The over-under sits at, it did drop down to 48.5, at least according to Bovada. Now look, that's a big number. I'm taking the Dolphins minus 11.5. I'm going to be honest. Look, I'm not going to actually bet this game, but just for the sake of the podcast, yeah, look, until this Giants team can prove that they can at least tread water, they're not going to get my kind of vote of confidence. And you also have the flip side of it, where the Dolphins, kind of like a wounded animal, coming in, probably hurt all week. Some people going, overrated Dolphins. They peaked week 3, blah, blah, blah. And I think they come out and they want to prove that last week is an aberration. And guess what? They look across the hall and see a wounded animal themselves. I think the Dolphins take full advantage of that. Mike McDaniel has shown that he's perfectly fine putting points on the board. So yeah, give me Miami 11.5 in this one. In terms of the over under, I do like the under, but it's only because of the Giants defense, the Giants offense. Obviously, you can make the joke, well, the Dolphins, did this all by themselves a few weeks ago. That's great and all, but I don't think that fully goes this week as well. There were a lot of kind of weird things that went down. I could see this being a 31-10 game. I really think the Dolphins have to literally score 40 points for this over to hit. And that very well could happen. I just not going to bet on it. So give me the Dolphins minus 11.5 and the under 50. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Had they not put up 70 against Denver, I would question the over-under myself right here. Giants are not going to have a chance on this one. And I say that because they proved who they are on Monday night. Miami has to look past the Buffalo game, and I believe that their focus is going to be, we need to make sure everybody is aware weeks 1 through 3 we're not a fluke. That is who we are. And I think they're going to come out, they're going to make that statement. Do they cover the 10? You said it's 11.5 now?
Yes.
They probably will cover that. They probably will cover that. And my only concern on the over-under, and not just saying, it'll go over 50 because Miami's going to roll up 48, no problem. The only question in my head is there's a better than slight chance that there's going to be thunderstorms in Miami that night or that day. And if that's the case, that could very well impact the game, not just from the rain standpoint, but if it's lightning and thunder, then they're going to postpone that game and everybody's going to go sit in the locker room for who knows how long. So the weather could be an issue here. But does Miami cover? Yeah, I'd say go ahead. You're safe to say that they'll cover. I don't see them being nice guys and saying we'll stop at 10. And it's not going to be, they may not, even if they're not being nice guys or if they're trying to be nice guys, New York's just going to give it up. But I
Yeah,
would take
nobody's
the
more
Animals.
charitable.
That's
Nobody is
it.
more charitable than the New York Giants right now. Someone needs to tell them it's October and not Christmas. They don't need to be Santa Claus just yet. But yeah, it's a big number, but you understand it.
Correct.
Moving on, we're going to go across the pond, if you will. It is Jacksonville, kind of their hometown, their second home. London, they will be facing the Buffalo Bills. So technically no home team here in this one. The Bills are 5.5-point favorites. The over-under sits at 48. And let me see if that line moved. Keep telling myself I'm going to be ready for
No,
stuff.
48 and a half. 48 and a half
Okay,
right
perfect.
now.
Yeah, 48.5. So that did move up 5.5 for Buffalo, and the over-under is 48.5. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Jaguars at Bills in London.
Well, this was one of those games in week 4 that really made me look like a goof, or the goof that I am, I should say, because I really thought the Falcons were going to come in and have a very good game against the Jaguars. As you put it, you used your 18-12 analogy. We're going to get back at Great Britain, and we are going to send the Falcon offense over there. Falcons put up 7 points. Jaguars played a good game. They scored every quarter, not like some of the teams we've talked about. And they don't have to travel. They're just kind of hanging around. That's not going to stop Buffalo, but it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a great game for the fans because you're going to see points. So I think you're going to see the over 48 and a half in this one. I'd get a half point down and just take it at 49 or 48, or maybe even go full point, 47 and a half. Does Buffalo cover 5.5? Yeah, I think they win by a full touchdown, at least 6, if not a full 7. It should be a fun game. 60% chance of rain. That might impact your decision on that over-under, but there is a 60% chance of rain right now.
Yes, and I do believe that is at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's not Wembley. Don't fully quote me on that. But the reason I bring that up is that's going to essentially be a soccer field. I believe they call it pitch. So it's a soccer pitch. So put that plus the rain, little different, something to think about there. And the other thing that you hit on that I really honestly I didn't think about until you brought it up was the no travel for the Jaguars. I do think that's a big advantage, but like you, I just from what we've seen from Buffalo the last 3 weeks, take week 1 out of it, Josh Allen struggles and all that stuff. Even as bad as they played, it still took essentially, kind of a last second situation for that to for them to lose. They very easily could be 4-0 right now. I think personally, overall, Buffalo looks like the most complete team in the AFC. So I am going to take Buffalo minus 5.5. But I am going to take the under here. And a lot of that is just because of playing in a soccer field, just something to get used to, things like that. Now, obviously, these players love it. It's natural grass, so we're not having the AstroTurf or this no, not AstroTurf. I'm really dating myself on that one, but the grassy turf or whatever it is now. But I think that will be good for the players. But I do think there is going to be some getting used to, at least on Buffalo's side. I feel like Jacksonville's probably got a timeshare there in London by now. But with that, and one other thing too that was interesting was I really wasn't terribly impressed with Jacksonville last week. Full disclosure, I don't have ESPN Plus, but I do have Disney Plus. So yes, I watched that London game and the Toy Story telecast or whatever that was, and it was buggy and it wasn't great, but it was kind of interesting to see how they put it all together. Interesting. Definitely I know there were a lot of parents that were very happy because it was the only way their kids would watch football. So but we shall see. I'm excited to see this game on NFL Network, not seeing Woody and Buzz every 2 seconds. So moving on to our second to last game we'll be talking about. It is the Cincinnati Bengals. They're heading to the desert to face the Arizona Cardinals. The Bengals are 3-point favorites here. And the over-under sits at 45. I'll take the reins on this one first. First of all, it's kind of like a I think back to Gladiator, Russell Crowe. Are you not entertained? Like, how can you not be impressed with what the Cardinals have done? Because all offseason we were told this is going to not only be the worst team in the league, this is going to be one of the worst teams you've ever seen. I think their over under win total was either 3.5. We would play 17 games. I mean, you fall forward 4 times, and guess what? You might win a game, those 4 games. And Arizona has, obviously the record doesn't fully show it, but they've been very impressive. Kind of reminds me of Brian Flores when the Dolphins were just obviously tanking for Tua, and the start of the season they looked terrible, and they got it figured out, and they ended up not getting the #1 pick, and they still ended up with Tua because Burrow ended up being the #1 overall pick. But it kind of reminds me of that, the way the Cardinals are playing. And on the other side, speaking of Joe Burrow, he's not even listed on the injury report. Like, is this some sort of Jedi mind trick that they're trying to like pull the wool over our eyes, or the Wizard of Oz, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain? Like, we see what's going on. It's obvious Joe Burrow is hurt, and you don't even put him on the injury report. I'm taking Arizona +3, 3.5. I'll buy the half a point. I'll pay to see if the Cardinals can get the job done. Josh Dobbs, just overall, he's a top 15 quarterback. That's incredible. It seems like every week I give him praise, and he deserves it. In terms of the over-under, give me the over here. I do think we do see some points being scored. Can Cincinnati at least start to figure it out? I do think at least against the Arizona defense, they can at least get moving in the right direction. But I mean, you would have told me 2 out of 4 weeks Cincinnati would have only put up single digits in points. I would have just thought you were crazy, but that's where we are. Crazy enough, but I am going to go with the over here. I do think we do see some points being scored. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Bengals at Cardinals.
Yeah, Cincinnati is in dire straits, if you ask me. And that they are the favorite in this game really makes me scratch my head. Like you, I am mildly impressed with the way Arizona comes out week in, week out. There's a lot of effort there, and some, little bits of success. I get it. They lost handily. There was no doubt that they were going to lose to the 49ers last week. They put points on the board, and every chance they get, they're doing that. Look what they did to Dallas. So it's there. The consistency is not there. I think they're going to get a little more direction into that consistency direction this week. I'm with you. It's going to go over 45. Cincinnati falls once again, and they need to really stop and look. And if he's not 100%, and if he's not on an injury report, fine and well. But you got to, at some point, say, we got to rest this guy, because having him under center isn't doing you any good at this point. So give me the Cardinals to cover +3.5. I'll take a half point like you did, and over 45.
Yeah, I think at some point the league might need to get involved. I remember the league kind of got involved with Bill Belichick, where Bill Belichick would put the entire team on the injury report. And they had to kind of step in and be like, look, this isn't your chance to play mind games with the other team. But at this point, it's like, look, put him as probable, but for you to sit here and say, no, don't believe your eyes. Don't believe what you're actually seeing. And if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm looking around going, no, can you tell them I'm not 100%? Because there's a lot of people going, hey, you're the highest paid quarterback in the league, and statistically got to be bottom 5. I don't have the stats in front of me, but just from what I've seen, has to be bottom 5 for qualified quarterbacks. So.
And I said it a couple seasons ago when he was the hot shot. Fur coats, wild clothes, shades in the locker room, out of the locker room, big cigars, gold chains. You can be every gimmick you want to pull out to get a following and try to maintain or try to present this cool factor. But you better produce, because cool turns to fool real fast.
Amen. All is fine until
somebody gets punched in the mouth.
Exactly. And unfortunately, Cincinnati has been punched in the mouth, even though the team wants you to pretend that they haven't, apparently. But Moving on to the final game we'll be talking about. It is the Battle of the News. The New Orleans Saints, they are heading to Foxborough to face the New England Patriots. The Patriots are 1.5-point favorites. Let me see if that line has moved.
They're one. It's one right now.
Okay, so it has moved down to 1. So essentially a pick 'em in New England. It is the over-under does sit at 40. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to start this one. Saints at Patriots.
Yeah, as you and I discussed beforehand, who knew Derek Carr was going to be back under center, but he was. And you know what that did for New Orleans? Not a damn thing. Guy threw for 107 yards. They only put field goals on the board. And the Derek Carr experiment is starting to not look like the best thing that could have happened for New Orleans. And that's too bad because, A, I still have an appreciation and respect for Derek Carr. I like the New Orleans Saints. And this one, though, I have a feeling at home you're going to see New England finally put one together defensively and offensively. I'll take New England and the money line. I'm not doing the -1 thing. Give me New England money line. And quite honestly, 40, I'm going to go half a point and take under 40.5.
Once again, I swear I didn't copy your homework, but that's exactly what I have.
And as sporting gentlemen, please, when you're done giving your prediction on this game, we'll pause and we're going to let Coach have a chance to call in and give his opinion. I'll bet you he doesn't call in. I'm just saying.
He's ducking us. He's ducking us. What can he say? You know, it's all fun and games when the Saints are on top, but the minute it falls apart, you know, nothing. But no, just on this one, I like New England money line. Look, if there were no labor laws in this country, Bill Belichick would have locked these players in the facility, and they would not have left. Bill Belichick lost his worst game as a coach last week, like 35 points, I think was that record. And I just think Belichick is looking around going, look, I don't care if we have to open every single playbook and this and that. And we ruin this one because we wanted to use it late, blah, blah, blah. The Patriots and Belichick, they are going to do everything to win this game. And then the one thing I have seen is I think Bill Belichick isn't afraid to pull the trigger on Mac Jones. Last week, I was under the impression that Bailey Zappi was released. And then halfway through, I saw he was playing. So I don't know what I'm talking about. But going back to that, he's given that opportunity. And I think if Mac Jones, I expect Mac Jones to start, but I think that leash is very short. And if Bailey Zappi comes in and gives them a zap of life, yes, pun was intended, we might not see Mac Jones going forward. But I just think there's way too many question marks for New Orleans. Like you said, even with Carr, if he does play, I'm all for toughness and playing hurt and things like that. But there are times to play hurt, and there are times where you need to just say, you know what, I need to take a few weeks. And when you're a quarterback and you have a bad shoulder injury, you need to take a few weeks. I mean, I thought it was a foregone conclusion. He was out 2 to 3 weeks, and, they flashed to the game on red zone and Carr drops back to pass. And last week was just weird for me. I felt like maybe I had just like a 24-hour fever dream where everything that I thought happened didn't. But anyways, I like New England here to cover, especially at home. Now, once again, you have a dome team. If they look at the schedule and they go, oh God, we got to go to Foxborough, they're very happy it's early October and not late December. So that works for them, but I don't think it works enough. And yeah, I like the under here. I like the idea of buying a half a point. I don't know how these two teams are going to score. I could very easily see this being a
21-17.
Yeah, I mean, even 21-17. And guess what? We're good. We're cashing it. So yeah, give me New England in the under. Yikes. I assume Coach will be watching, but it'll probably be begrudgingly. It's been tough for really both of these, franchises that just 5-6 years ago, obviously were at the top of their conferences, not so much anymore. But with that being said, Raider Jim, final thoughts for our week 5 episode.
Yeah, it just worked out that we're speaking about New Orleans and we're speaking about the New England Patriots. And my thoughts go out to the Patriot fan base, the Patriot families. One of the guys that I just always followed and thought he was one of those men's men, and the consummate professional, Russ Francis, tight end, who perished this week in a plane crash. Really, really struck me hard because he wasn't that old of a guy. And it was he and one other person in the plane, but it went down, and Russ is no longer with us, but he was a one hell of a tight end. He's the guy you want in that position. Probably one of those prototype tight end players that you would say, if you want to play tight end, son, play it like that guy.
Yeah, and I'm gonna keep it in the same region, and unfortunately, kind of on the same note, not football related, but the Boston Red Sox legend, for me at least, the greatest knuckleballer of all time, Tim Wakefield. Apparently, had been dealing with brain cancer. He unfortunately passed away this past weekend, I believe. And really everything that's come out, and a lot of times, look, things come out and, oh, what a great person he was and things like that. But you kind of heard some things, while he was live that you're like, you question it. Never for Tim Wakefield. He was a class act. He was pretty much synonymous, as crazy as it is, because he wasn't, a huge piece of that 2004 team. Obviously, he was a good starter, but, obviously, Manny and David Ortiz and some of those other guys might come to mind first. But for me, I'll always kind of remember that Tim Wakefield kind of leading that team. He was a fantastic knuckleballer, and from everything I've heard, a fantastic human being as well. So thoughts and prayers to his family, his friends, his former teammates, and really, all of the Red Sox nation, and anyone who was a fan of him, because, just because you don't know the guy or anything like that, that stuff does get you, especially when it's somebody only 57 years old. Far, far too young. But with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Weekly, presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench, but we are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating, everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.